I'm excited to be stepping in for Samson for this panel, where we're going to figure out how do we get here. We've made our way from shells to the 1944 Bretton Woods gold standard to today, and also tomorrow, what money looks like in space. So I'm joined by a great panel. I've got Christian, Steve, Morgan, and Daniel here with me. Let me first do a quick disclaimer, which is that I'm here for the University of New Hampshire, where I'm an adjunct professor in the blockchain program focused on the economics of technology and social impacts. I also have a day job with the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission as a senior economist, but I'm not speaking in that capacity today, nor am I representing them. These views are my own, and my thoughts are my own and not those of any member of the U.S. government, the commission, or the directors. I wanted to start with something that Brock mentioned and tie it back to a question for the panel. So Brock mentioned a new definition of a billionaire as a person who helps a billion people. And here in this country, we have 55 million people that are under or unbanked. That's 20%, 25% of households. I'd like to start with my friend Daniel and let him jump in and how he sees that we get to this point. Daniel? I'd originally asked Daniel a question about the 55 million unbanked in this country and how it relates to our evolution through time from seashells to the gold standard to where we are today. But okay, Steve, I know that you're the head of market research over there at Coin Genius. Hopefully, you do have a great connection, and you could give us an overview of what an M3 of 16 trillion means to all of us, and how that relates to our difference between the gold standard and fiat. Thanks.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. I don't know if you can see this, but I brought a couple props with me. I'm Stephen Quan, and I'm the head of research with Coin Genius. In my previous career, I worked on Wall Street for 20 years, well, Wall Street and LaSalle Street, and was in precious metals, commodities, derivatives, and managed funds. So I know a bit about this, and I'll show this. Can everyone see this? This is $20. Okay. Now, can everyone see this? I don't know if you can, but that early on, that was kind of what people considered money, and the dollar took over as it was just easier to carry. So in 1934, they devalued the silver versus gold, and that's kind of when the first, I guess, printing of money was done without, oh.
Come on, guys. There we go. Morgan, you good to go. You want to make your intro? Looks like Steve is trying to dial back in here.
Sorry, I think we're having a lot of technical issues.
Yep,
so now I'm on my phone. So everyone can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, Morgan, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. For my intro, my name's Morgan Steckler. I've been in the U.S. retirement account arena for about 20 years with a focus on Forex and precious metals. I got introduced to cryptocurrency back in about 2012, 2013. From the introduction, I left that firm where I was working, and I was a co-founder or founder of 3 of the first companies in the space that were legally compliant to put cryptocurrency inside of an IRA. Now, the purpose of being able to trade and store crypto inside of an IRA is the tax advantages. Mainly, if you're a trader and you want to accumulate or hodl, for the former, you don't have to pay taxes when you're trading under the umbrella of retirement accounts. So it's a really great way, one of the best ways to stack your sats and to really accumulate your wealth where you don't have to give it back to Big Brother. That's the whole purpose here, is for us to make money, get out of this fiat, if you will, and have a hedge, whether it is precious metals or cryptocurrency, against these fiat currencies, and for you to be able to thrive and take care of your family and your children and their children to all be okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Morgan. Christian, Steve, or Daniel, are you on the line? Okay, Morgan, is it just us?
I don't know. Is it?
It must be just us. So I say we just have a conversation. So I'm going to throw a couple of things out at you, and if someone else comes on, just have them put up in the chat. We can jump to it. One of the things that Brock mentioned was a new definition of billionaires as a person who helps a billion people. As someone who teaches on social impact and technology, I really love that. I wanted to delve into what you see the future looks like for cryptocurrencies, fiat, a return to a gold standard for the un- and underbanked populations of the country.
I mean, that's a lot of questions there, and it's really interesting to have this wonderful conference and this topic right now. We're in a black swan event, a triple black swan event, if you will, that one that occurs every 100 years or so. This is going to change everyone's lives for the foreseeable future. This is not going to be a 1 or 2 month situation, in my opinion. This is going to be something that is going to affect years to come. With that, you see this QE that has occurred and this unprecedented helicopter drop, trillions upon trillions of dollars that are coming in. And honestly, since Bretton Woods, when the U.S. dollar left the gold standard, which happened starting in the 30s and slowly got devalued up until the 70s, the dollar's fiat, and no fiat currency in the history of money has ever survived. So that really makes me someone who is always wanting to hedge and believes in something like Bitcoin, in precious metals, because in some ways they meet the better standard form of what money represents, which is being fungible, exchangeable, transferable, transportable, and has a store of value in and of itself. The dollar certainly doesn't have that last one. So I think as we see this world changing, something like cryptocurrency will become a main form of money. Will it be the only source? I don't think so, but it is necessary these days to have this hedge. I see Steve has come on as well. I didn't answer the question fully there, but I can talk on and on about it. But I definitely want to talk more about the gold standard, how I wish we could go there, but I don't see how we could with the amount of dollars that are being printed on a monthly basis, especially now.
Okay. Steve, do you want to jump in on your comments on the gold standard if you're back on the line with us?
Sure. Can you hear me now, everyone? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes,
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
So I don't know if you heard me before. I'm the head of research with Coin Genius now, but my background was on Wall Street, commodities, derivatives, primarily gold and crude. So these I know fairly well. And I guess I agree with, I mean, gold is what it is because there was a market for it. Like the government said, okay, it's worth $20 an ounce. It's worth $35 an ounce. So I'm not 100% in agreement that there aren't issues with that. I mean, if the government said, okay, we're backing dollars with Bitcoin and it's $100,000 a coin, so now they've said what it's worth. I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think that things have value because there's a market for it. Why is Bitcoin worth $7,000? I don't know. It's just some numbers. I mean, it's really no different than any other numbers, but the reason why someone's willing to pay that for it. Why is this gold coin worth $1,800 now, not $20? It says that it's $20 on the back, but I don't know many that would trade it for that price right now. And I think as long as something has a market and the general populace derives a value from that, then money's just a term. It's what can I exchange for something that I need. And I guess why the dollar is widely accepted, it's, I guess, the intermediary, but it only goes one way for the government. It's, if I give Morgan $20 and he gives me a barrel of crude oil, he can go deposit that $20 at the bank. If I go to the bank with my barrel of crude oil, they're probably going to get the local news. So it's kind of, you need people feel in times of turmoil, a la the equity crash, what did people do? They went to the dollar. But that's because we're printing 6 trillion of them. So it's kind of I guess, a mentality. I know this is a little bit on a tangent, but it's what we're trained as traders, money managers, I guess humans. When you're nervous, people go to cash. But why are we going to cash when they printed $6-8 trillion? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But I agree with Morgan 100% that I've been involved in gold when it was 300, silver when it was $4. I mean, I remember every time it got to 550, I'd buy it. Got my well, I didn't do well at the time, but
so Morgan and Steve, just in the interest of seeing if anyone else can jump in here, Christian or Daniel, you back with us? I'm going to count to 3. Okay. So assuming Christian and Daniel aren't back with us, let me be contrarian here for a second to see if we can't, dive into this a bit deeper. What about the positive impacts of fractional reserve banking and the added liquidity it creates? How do you get to that same place if you're using something that's more of a strict adherence to the gold standard, or something like crypto replacing fiat?
Can I add something real? I think the restriction part is the main issue with something. When it's backed by gold, it's actually the main issue with cryptocurrency too. But if every bond that was printed had to be backed by gold, and the US government's coming in to buy, what are people going to do ahead of time? Buy, and then you just get a different sort of bubble where those that can afford gold run it up to 100,000 or whatever price is deemed reasonable, and it creates a different impact. And I'm going to touch on one more. The same problem that exists now that many of us, I guess, are getting away from the system from, it's still here in cryptocurrency. And, I've read things by Satoshi. I try to be a student of the game. But really what's been created in the past few years, I don't think it was the Satoshi vision, actually. And no, I'm not a Bitcoin maximist, and I believe that all projects, deserve a chance, but Bitcoin is essentially the gold to everything else. So when organizations in blockchain want to grow, you need the price of Bitcoin to go up. I mean, in 5 years, if there's 20,000 projects, the growth is going to be stunted. And I think that just as the US went off of the standard of gold to be, more, I guess, less restrictive on growth, Bitcoin is its own entity. Like, it's kind of up here. And everything else is a project. I mean, there's a few others, but there just needs to be a better medium than using Bitcoin as a proxy for other things. Like, it's in the blockchain space. It's not really a comparison. I'll go into it, I guess, later. I'll let everyone else talk.
All right, Morgan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? It sounds like Steve.
He answered it great. I agree with everything pretty much Steven has said. I also like him bringing out the fiat paper and the St. Gaudens gold coin that he had there. That was pretty cool, unless that was a gold eagle. I'm a fan of that. I think that just we're in uncharted times. So the amount of people who are now going to be going through unemployment, the amount of people who cannot live day to day or month to month, cannot make their rent, you're going to see defaults. You're going to see this jobless levels that we've already seen. 6.5 million? It's going to go to 20 million, 30 million. You're going to see a defaults. How are we going to get out of this? That's a bigger wave than COVID, because that's going to have a long-lasting effect. How are we going to get out of it? And can you just print more of this fiat? What's that going to do? Is that going to turn us into, the dinar situation, or the Weimar Republic and the marks? You're just going to have these $100 trillion notes like the Zimbabwe dollars. I don't know what the solution is going to be, but I do know that I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, but I am a hodler with Bitcoin because there's only so much out there. Even gold, you can dig some out of the ground or a comet can hit, but if there's only 21 million Bitcoin, that at least has a store of value and is fungible down to 8 decimal points and has something that you can't create more. I mean, you could fork it and that's a whole nother conversation, but that has a purity and a finite amount that at least will have that store of value, which, is the dollar doesn't have anymore. That's what scares me personally. And, you can keep some cash on hand. You'll need it now, but you're not going to be able to buy as much as you normally would, especially in these times where you're going to start seeing price gouging as you do with PPE equipment, et cetera.
I think something that's maybe missing from the conversation that I'd like to add back in is the relative value that currency markets use to adjust pricing. So the printing of dollars or injections of liquidity through QE is happening other places as well. So the relative value of the dollar compared to other currencies and the relative values compared to Bitcoin and its impact on people's hedges should also be kept into perspective. What do you guys think about that?
Well, overall, I don't know. Can you hear me now, guys?
Yep.
Oh,
I can hear you
awesome.
fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Christian.
overall, I'm sorry I missed part of this. My computer crashed or the application crashed, whatever. I think overall we need to actually pull this down to what is money today and then understand what are the buckets of money, because you can't talk about money in generalities. There's very different money sources or money classifications. I mean, the default ones that most people will know, M0 being just the physical cash, but then also the other classification that the Federal Reserve puts forth. But then more importantly, the classifications that the Federal Reserve doesn't mention, right? Because the Federal Reserve System actually doesn't create most of the money. Most of the money is being created by commercial bank. And what actually creates inflation is the attribution of this money that's being created to unproductive activity. So the 2008 crash, everybody knows, was created by the mortgage crisis. So that's part of the inflation. For the past 40 years, we had on average 10 to 12% inflation from that part of money printing by commercial banks into the mortgage markets. And what created the new inflation was corporate debt, corporate buyback of stocks, and that's created the inflation for the stock markets, right? So I think what we need to talk about is all these different classifications of money. Money as a technology has split a very long time ago, a few decades ago, right? So the default medium of exchange is bytes. It doesn't really matter. It's an entry in the database. It doesn't matter whether or not that is the yen, the euro, the dollar, they're all just entries in the database. Your current bank account is a DLT, it's a distributed ledger system, or more accurately, a federated distributed ledger system, right? So from that perspective, also no one has been treating fiat, quote unquote, as money, as in it's not a really useful store of value. It's a form of payment that you keep around in your checking account as much as you think you want to spend in the near future, because you're storing your value in something else. So with these two items checked off, it's the default medium of exchange being bytes. There's no store of value function left in fiat. So what's the remaining function? It's just that of unit of account. Means it hardly matters. It's a language, right? This is what we need to implement in technology to avoid quote unquote money printing, and then understand where the actual money is coming from. It's not predominantly coming from the Federal Reserve System. It's predominantly coming from the commercial banks that created it mostly for unproductive activity. So to make a very visible metaphor, if you get a mortgage, right? The bank gets to create this security, this mortgage instrument, and then gets to also deposit, meaning create this money from nothing. So if the first time you get a mortgage for a house, let's say it's $500,000, eventually it gets paid off. That's additional $500,000 to money supply. The next bank does the same thing, that issues a new mortgage for the same house. There's no new asset, right? There's just more money overall in the supply. This is the main source of inflation. It has been for 40 years now. And that's what we need to be talking about. We're not talking about mostly anything that's actually important right now. I'm going to leave it there. I can continue for an hour.
Yeah. I think I think the role of the banks in the creation of money supply is a really important point, Christian. One of the things that we had hit on a little bit earlier, and I'd be interested with either your perspective or Stephen's. I actually see both of your. Oh, Jeremy Bourne is raising his hand. Jeremy, did you have a question for us? Our esteemed host, I see, is raising his hand.
Nope, we're good to go.
Oh, okay.
And I know we're waiting on Daniel as well.
Oh, excellent. Daniel, you're back?
I see him on the public chat. Trying to get in.
Excellent. Feel free to jump in here, buddy.
Can I add something to what Christian said? I agree in the fact that most people don't use a lot of cash anymore, or the dollar bill or the euro. I mean, what I see is, I guess I saw someone pay for one stamp at the post office, which is, I think, 50 cents with a credit card. So, no, you have a piece of plastic, a little magnetic strip. It sends something here, something there. And yes, it's seemingly infinite. And I do believe that something that's finite is like Bitcoin does hold that special place. It's, even more finite than gold, where the higher the price goes, I guess the deeper in the earth they drill or dig. But there does reach a point where it really can't go much further, because I guess you would essentially price other people out, where I don't think stores are going to change if it's a, I guess, market traded item such as Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever, Ethereum, anything that has a market. I don't know if the people are ready, or many people are ready to have that kind of volatility, where if everyone's bank account went down 5% today, but the loaf of bread and the gallon of milk still cost the same, that might be, I guess, slightly difficult for people to understand. But the one thing I will add is, also with derivatives and futures that I'm very familiar with, there's far more exposure to these markets, blockchain, crypto, gold, silver, equities, than is led to believe. I mean, in the equity and bond world, it's hundreds of X. I think last time I checked that there was about 340 million Bitcoins of exposure in the market right now. So those are, I guess, other factors in something that's market traded being the medium of exchange.
Hey, just so you guys know, Daniel, I think, got in finally on audio. Can you hear me?
Is that Daniel speaking?
It's amazing. I've had 30 minutes of technical problems with the format, but I'm here.
Well, Daniel, I'm happy to cede to you the last 5 minutes here. I know that you have been working hard on a blockchain-based banking company, and I'd love you to talk to a little bit about it and how it relates to our debate today around fiat and gold.
Yeah, I love this topic, which is why I've been passionately trying to get in here. So, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of people who still kind of go back to the gold standard, and they say, they look at it fondly, which blows my mind, because I think the gold standard is a total fucking disaster. And anybody who thinks that the gold standard's great, let me give you one simple little factoid for your backwards brain. And I don't mean that as an insult. There have been 5 depressions in the United States history, and all of them have happened under the gold standard. So the functional problem is, if you think about what we're experiencing today, we've lost 16, 17 million jobs in 3 weeks. It's an epic disaster. The system is breaking down on itself. And the way that monetary policy works, because I'm sure we all have different opinions on this, and I'm a student of it, I pay attention to history. If you can't inflate the monetary supply, what you will experience is deflation. And deflation is the most devastating impact to an economy unless you compare it to necessarily a hyperinflation scenario, which has significant negatives to it, obviously. But we're lucky to be in the United States to have the world's reserve currency. So when you have this depressionary event globally, what you actually have is a tremendous demand for American dollars. So the Fed is basically getting free money, and if we stuck to some kind of gold standard, then what you'd experience is a very bad thing where we'd have, in probably a decade, 30% unemployment, soup lines. We're talking about real pain. So I'm a big fan of Bitcoin because, as it's written in the Bitcoin white paper, it says, look, it's an inflationary asset. It's effectively a commodity, but it's not that it's gaining in value. Bitcoin is still depreciating in value. It just depreciates in value at a lesser rate than the fiat supply. And to have a monetary policy that forces people out of, that incentivizes people out of this piece of paper that is imaginary, that is a fiction in our brain that we treat like it's more important than God. It's treated at a religious level globally. So to get people out of this fictional thing that we have in our hands that we understand as trust, where trust that if I give you $5, you can pass that $5 on to somebody else. Bitcoin doesn't actually increase in value; it just decreases in value. I should say it doesn't increase in value as much. So the inflationary impact, it's less inflationary. So the net of it is, I love Bitcoin. And if you actually like Bitcoin and you believe in the scarcity element of Bitcoin, then what's happening with the Federal Reserve right now, where they're printing money at a rate that has never happened in history, then you probably are more supportive of Bitcoin now more than ever, because the reason it was built, the reason it was created was literally for this moment. So I'll stop there, but I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin and a huge sort of visceral enemy to the idea of a gold standard for the reasons I already said.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common.
Daniel, I appreciate you
myth.
being able to jump in there. I'm going to try to keep us on track, though. I just got a message from Christina asking us to start wrapping things up. So with that in mind and trying to keep the conference back on a reasonable schedule, I'm going to say thank you to Stephen, to Christian, and to Daniel, and also to Morgan for everyone working through these difficulties. We're all working remotely and dealing with the same connection Wi-Fi issues. So I really appreciate everyone working together on this. This was a good panel, and I look forward to hearing the rest of them throughout the day today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Thanks.